Okay, everyone, hello. First of all, thank you all for coming. It's great to see everyone, so many Agilists here at Babylon. And thank you, Manny and Romy. I think we've had two really interesting talks on the micro and the macro scale of driving Agile. Really good setup, thank you. So I want to start with a question for everyone. Who set goals at the start of the year for their company? Hands up. Barely anyone. Okay. And did you guys, are you still following them? Keep your hands up if you're still following and looking at those goals on a regular basis. Yeah? Okay, cool. So what I'm going to try and convince you today is that goals are really important to enable agility at scale. And my talk is going to be about the journey we've been on at Babylon to do this. We've had a great crash course in what not to do, as well as what to do over the course of the last few years as we've scaled. And so I'm looking to share some of these learnings with everyone so that you can hopefully implement them in your own company. So a little bit about me first before I kick off this slide. I'm Ed Lowe. I'm the Director of Agile Delivery here. And I've been at Babylon for the last 3 years. I joined as an individual contributor, working with teams, building our websites, and also building some of our member communications. And then slowly worked my way up the scale. And it's been a great company to learn from because we've grown so quickly. We've had a lot of opportunities for us to see different scenarios, even within the scaling journey, going from a small company to a large company. And these are the two mental models that I'm going to talk about. And these are the two things I think about when I'm thinking about Agile at scale. The first one, some of you might recognize from the Spotify model, which is the alignment versus autonomy model. And this is one of the most useful things in the Spotify model, I think, that I've pulled out and always think about when I'm thinking about teams externally. So the goal for teams is for us to have high alignment where everyone understands what they need to do, and also they have high autonomy where they're able to define their own solution to the problems they're given. You can see some of the other pitfalls there. If we lose autonomy or lose alignment, we either end up with teams who are just told exactly what they need to do, or we end up with teams where they're not clear on the strategy and they're working on things that don't connect together. And the other thing I think about with teams as a mental model is feedback loops. So the key for Agile to me is all about feedback loops, both with the customer and with the team, to make sure every one of our teams has an opportunity to be able to build experiments towards the goal, be able to measure using metrics, and then learn and pivot if we learn new information. So what I'm going to talk about in the rest of this talk is those two models. How does that apply to what we've done at Babylon? So here's a bit of context about Babylon if you don't know. So Babylon started in 2013, and its mission is to make high-quality healthcare accessible and affordable for everyone on Earth. How do we do that? We do that through digital solutions. So the accessible element suggests everyone has a phone in their pocket. Actually, it's quite an effort to travel to go and get basic healthcare. And we can, by putting healthcare on people's phones, we can make them more accessible. Similarly, we can make it more affordable by having digital and automated solutions. If you go and look at the compute costs in order to get a digital triage, it's pennies versus seeing a doctor. Similarly, a digital appointment is the fraction of the cost of an in-person appointment. So we use digital technology in order to drive that strategy. If you look at the bottom two graphs, this tells the story of where we've been with Babylon over the last few years. So when I joined, the company was about $18 million in revenue, and now it's 1.2 billion in revenue. So the scale we've gone has been absolutely incredible, going at about 4 times per year. And I'll talk a lot about that scale and the impacts that's had on our ability to do delivery in that kind of environment. And secondly, you can see the countries we're in on the right-hand side. So when I joined, we were mainly UK and Rwanda-based company. And now we've expanded into Canada, into the US, into APAC region. And that has driven different strategies for the different healthcare industries. So that's also been a really important factor in the story I'm about to tell. So today what I'm going to do is talk a little bit about the different approaches towards doing Agile at scale and running our products and technology organizations. I'll talk about the success and failures of those approaches on the teams and why goals have become really important as a way of us doing that. And we'll talk about three main phases. So we'll talk about 2020, when we were blitz scaling, which was really increasing a huge number of employees at the company. We'll then talk about the consolidation, which is when we tried to gain more control. And finally, we'll talk about where we've come to now in terms of trying to build high-performing teams. Okay, I think in each of these cases, it's really interesting. There's a very good motive in each one where we're trying to solve a problem. However, it has unintended consequences on the company. So when I joined in April 2020, everyone had just started during the COVID lockdown. I started this job entirely remote, which was weird. I was just sent a laptop and suddenly started a new job sitting in the same room. Babylon was still growing at an incredibly high rate and adding, as I was saying, 40 or 50 people a week. At this point, we had this approach that our teams know best, let them work on the most important issues. And one of the factors that was important here is that the speed was absolutely incredible of those teams. We wanted to get out a new COVID triage tool. We were able to ship to production a new AI model in 2 weeks. From an idea to getting out, and that was way faster than any competitor. However, the scene inside the company was very different. What we were seeing was a huge amount of duplication of work, which happens when you start getting to scale, as Manny was saying earlier. Teams working on opposing strategies, so there may be a US or a Canada or a UK strategy, and people working on different strategies. And also a proliferation of tooling and high costs. So every single team having the autonomy, the flip side of that is often they had their own tooling. In order to solve their own problem, they were enabled to do that. However, that made it super expensive and really racked up the cost. So if we think about that alignment versus autonomy model, we were in that bottom right corner. So we had really high autonomy but low alignment. And as an Agile delivery manager working in one of those teams, the key challenge was how do we actually measure what we're doing? Because there's so many different strategies going on at the same time, it made it very hard to determine what common measures we were doing in order to drive the business forward. So we did the exact opposite. So obviously we did this during 2020, and over time, it got to the point where we went, too much chaos. We can't cope with this, too much chaos. Let's bring it all the way back, and let's make sure we know what everyone is working on and ensure it's the most important thing. I'm sure other people have had this experience where senior leadership are like, I need to grab control of what we're doing. Tell me everything that's going on across the different teams. So work was highly defined at the senior level and left little room for change at the team level. Part of me, from a delivery perspective, was like, amazing. I now know everything going on. My life just got so much easier. We had clear visibility of everything going on. It felt like you could plan better. However, the costs were a bit more delayed. So what ended up happening is the people close to the problems weren't making as many decisions. And as a result, we ended up working on the wrong thing. It also demotivated the teams because they didn't have the same autonomy that they were used to previously. And also, we fell into that feature factory problem where we were churning out work items, big green tick from delivery, well done, we've shipped it, but it wasn't actually helping our users. So the Spotify model, we zoomed all the way to the top left, where we now had great alignment, but we had less autonomy. And the key thing you felt in the team is you weren't learning. So you had your set plan that you were following, but you weren't learning and improving and changing your plan over time. I think at big, slow-moving companies, this is usually the more prevalent problem that you get at scale. So obviously, we're going to end with everything being great, right? And being in the top right quadrant. So what we've learned, I think, is the importance of setting that boundary between allowing the team to have autonomy about what they do, but having the clear guidance of what the direction is. So the leadership line is we need to set the direction for the teams, but they know best how to solve the problems. So this means that teams understand the problem, they provide the best solutions, and we have more engaged and excited teams. The costs is, while we're in that top right quadrant, it becomes a lot harder to measure. Previously, it was 0 to 1 for this feature. We had this list of acceptance criteria. We're done, we move it to done, and we're finished. It's much harder when we're trying to actually figure out the impact that's having over time. And that difficult, messy work is really the difference between having that extra autonomy. So this exists in the top right, and this is where you can really have feedback loops, because you can measure effectively what you want to do, and you can then learn from it over time and build better things. So these are the two mental models I try and think through for the decisions that we make. So how do we set goals at Babylon? So at Babylon, we use WOWs as our framework, which stands for what, owner, when, in order to align our teams and create transparency. We ask what we're trying to achieve, who is the owner, so we have a single accountable owner for achieving it, and when gives an idea of the time criticality. It borrows a lot from the OKR framework that Romy was talking about, and seen at many companies. The idea is that they understand their goals and what they are working towards. As well as their goals, they also share, here are the key things we're trying to do in order to achieve those goals. So there's still some visibility of the work that we're trying to do and being tracked, but it should be in the context of the goals that they've been set as a team, and having that separation is really important. So a couple of examples on the right-hand side from teams. For the registration team, it might be to increase the percentage of members who complete the registration flow, and there might be a series of epics that we want to deliver in order to hit that goal. So that's broadly the framework. I wanted to just touch on something that I think came up in Bo Talks as well, around how we track those goals is actually really important. When we started doing this WOW process, we had maybe 2 or 3 Google Sheets and Google Slide Deck and many things that had to be updated. I think most people have been in that reporting hell of having to update multiple things simultaneously. One of the changes we made was to actually move it into Jira alongside all of the work. And that gave us a single source of truth that allowed quick communication of information, and was actually really well received and meant we could be quite lightweight in our reporting. So the tooling does matter, I think, on this. So that's a little bit about what we're doing at Babylon around goals at scale. I wanted to share some of the things we're looking to do next. So we've been doing a quarterly planning cycle for a long period of time, where we set our WOWs and our goals for that quarter, and that's our commitment. We're now moving to a continuous planning cycle where we're looking to do this on a more regular basis to try and reduce that planning overhead. I think as well, every company has a much bigger focus on costs right now, and it's definitely the same true at Babylon. So we're looking at what the return on investment is for prioritization across the business. And also, we're looking into FinOps as well, which gives visibility of team cloud costs. So how much are you spending on AWS or GCP per team? And feeding that back into the team, which is often a feedback loop that's missing, is how much they're actually costing to run that team on a regular basis, as well as trying to drive better collaboration with the other areas of the business that we're serving. And the same framework applies. So are we improving our alignment, our autonomy for the teams, or are we improving the feedback loops? We're trying to think through that every single time we're making one of these improvement decisions. So in conclusion, embrace goals as a way of ensuring you retain agility at scale. Goals allow you to set the direction within the leadership team whilst giving the teams the space they need to innovate, and watch out for those pesky traps that we've seen around over-defining the work or leaving complete flexibility up to the teams. Very interested to hear other people's approaches to this. So again, thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. Thank you.